It usually starts early, not with rejection, not with bullying, but with a quiet feeling you can't explain. You're in the room, but not really in it. Everyone else seems to move in sync, laughing at the right moments, speaking the same invisible language. And you're just watching. Not because you don't want to belong, but because somehow you never quite fit. This is the psychology of people who feel like outsiders everywhere. At home, at school, at work, even among people they love. And the strangest part is this: most of them aren't socially awkward. They're not unlikable. They're not broken. They're different in a way that's hard to name. And today, we're going to understand why. People often assume feeling like an outsider means being rejected. But psychologically, it's often the opposite. Many outsiders are highly observant. They notice tone shifts, subtext, unspoken rules. They see the room too clearly. And when you see the mechanics behind social behavior, it becomes hard to lose yourself inside it. You don't blend in because you're aware that blending in is a performance. So instead of acting, you observe. Psychologists call this social self-consciousness paired with high self-awareness. Your mind is constantly monitoring not just what you say, but how it lands. Not just who you are, but how you're perceived. And that creates distance. Not because you think you're better than others, but because you're constantly asking, where do I actually belong in this? Many people who feel like outsiders grew up learning to adapt. They were the emotional translators, the ones who adjusted their personality depending on who they were with. So, instead of developing one solid sense of self, they developed range. They learned to read people before being themselves. And when you can be many versions of you, it becomes hard to feel like any version is home. This is why outsiders often feel lonely, even in groups. They're present, but guarded. Connected, but slightly removed. They're listening more than they're speaking, analyzing more than they're reacting. And people mistake that distance for disinterest. But it's not. It's caution. There's a concept in psychology called identity diffusion. It happens when someone struggles to anchor their identity in one place, one group, or one role. Outsiders often experience this not because they lack identity, but because they see beyond labels. They don't fully attach to tribes, trends, or social scripts, because deep down, they sense that those things are temporary. And that creates a painful contradiction. They crave connection, but shallow connection feels unbearable. They want belonging, but false belonging feels worse than being alone. So they hover at the edges, close enough to feel, far enough to protect themselves. If you've ever felt like an outsider everywhere, you may have noticed this too. You connect deeply with individuals, but rarely with groups. You feel understood in one-on-one conversations, but invisible in crowds. Because your nervous system isn't wired for noise, it's wired for meaning. Another reason outsiders feel out of place is value mismatch. You may live in a world that rewards speed, competition, and performance, while you value depth, reflection, and authenticity. So even when you're successful, something feels off. You're playing a game you never wanted to master. And slowly, unconsciously, your body learns something dangerous. That safety comes from distance. That belonging requires compromise. that being fully seen might cost too much. So you keep parts of yourself hidden, not because you're fake, but because you're protecting what's real. Many outsiders are emotionally deep. They feel things strongly even when they don't show it. They're affected by art, music, words, silence. They sense meaning where others see nothing. And that sensitivity makes the world feel louder, harsher, faster. So they retreat inward. But feeling like an outsider doesn't mean you're meant to be alone forever. It often means you haven't found your environment yet. The place, the people, the pace, where your nervous system can finally relax. Outsiders don't belong everywhere. They belong somewhere specific, with people who value depth over dominance, curiosity over conformity, presence over performance. And those spaces are rare, but they exist. There's another layer to this psychology that's rarely talked about. Some outsiders were never emotionally mirrored growing up. No one fully reflected them back and said, "I see who you are." So they grew up self-defining. And self-defined people often feel out of sync in a world built on imitation. But here's the reframe. Feeling like an outsider everywhere doesn't mean you don't belong. It means you don't disappear into environments that require you to shrink. It means your identity is internally anchored, not socially borrowed. And that's not a flaw. That's a form of psychological independence. The healing doesn't come from forcing yourself to fit in. It comes from allowing yourself to stop trying. From finding places where your quiet isn't mistaken for weakness, where your depth isn't met with discomfort, where your questions are welcomed, not avoided. If you feel like an outsider everywhere, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're not missing something everyone else has. You simply belong to a smaller, quieter frequency. And when you finally find it, you won't feel like an outsider anymore. You'll feel like yourself. And that's where real belonging begins.